Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Andre and I'm your bookworm, and today we are going back to one of our favorite series here, and I'm talking about Lord of the Mysteries. We're reviewing Volume 4. What is Lord of the Mysteries, you ask? Well, Lord of the Mysteries is a web novel, a Chinese web novel, written by Cuttlefish That Loves Diving, or the original name, which is Qian Shui De Wuzei, and this is a steampunk mixing Victorian vibes to this world with a lot of magic, a lot of potions, a lot of mythical creatures, you name it. I have read and reviewed the first 3 volumes. I actually have 4 reviews because 2 of them are for the first volume, but you'll get to understand what I mean if you see those reviews. You can check out just like the thumbnails or the cards up above. Now, regarding the details of this volume, I don't know exactly when it was published as a volume because the chapters in this web novel were being published as they went every week, and so I don't know exactly when the chapters for this volume were collated into one big volume, let's say. And the other thing is, regarding Goodreads, I know that Goodreads is not the best website to look at web novels because a lot of the people who read web novels do not usually go to Goodreads, but to keep the consistency, let's keep looking at what Goodreads has to say. And in terms of ratings, this volume has close to 2,000 ratings, which is okay. I mean, not the best, but again, because this is not the usual media where web novels go through, it's understandable. As for the score, it has an average score of 4.72 out of 5, which is amazing. It's really high. Again, with web novels, you expect them to be rated slightly different from how people rate, for example, a novel, a fantasy one, or a science fiction. I mean, even within novels, you see this difference because fantasy usually tends to be much higher compared to science fiction. So web novels is just a different category. 4.72 still, it's really good. Now let's get on to our housekeeping items. You know the drill if you've been here on the channel for a while. First one is synopsis. I'm going to narrate the synopsis for you so you know what this volume or this web novel is about, because the synopsis is pretty much the same across all volumes. But if you don't want to listen to it and you're just going to go through to the review, you can jump to the next timestamp and you'll get on to plot, which is our first category. Otherwise, stick around and you shall hear me. With the rising tide of steam power and machinery, who can come close to being a beyonder? Shrouded in the fog of history and darkness, who or what is the lurking evil that murmurs into our ears? Waking up to be faced with a string of mysteries, Joe Mingrui finds himself reincarnated as Klein Moretti in an alternate Victorian era world where he sees a world filled with machinery, cannons, dreadnoughts, airships, different machines, as well as potions, divination, hexes, tarot cards, sealed artifacts. The light continues to shine, and mystery has never gone far. Follow Klein as he finds himself entangled with the churches of the world, both orthodox and unorthodox, while he slowly develops newfound powers thanks to the Beyonder potions. Like the corresponding tarot card, the Fool, which is numbered 0, a number of unlimited potential, this is the legend of the Fool. Okay, with this out of the way, let's get on and look at the scores for the previous volume so we can get a sense of how we rate these volumes or this web novel so far. And as you can see, it's been on an upwards trajectory. First volume got a 4.4, then 4.6, and then the third one, which was the best one so far, got a 5 out of 5. Of course, the first one, there were a few hiccups, let's say, with writing style that I keep mentioning them, so I'm not going to mention here. Just know that there were some hiccups. Of course, as well, the characters weren't as developed as they are currently, so those things have been improving, which is always good to see. And now the question remains, which is, will this volume be just as good as the third one, or will it suffer a bit and go down? Let's find out. So plot is our first category, and we still follow Klein because we'll always be following Klein, except this time around we don't see Klein going into the sea, or at least not as much, because he returns to Backland, and so we get again this political intrigue kind of plot that happens as he is trying to get involved in high society. But there's still some parts where he travels and goes to different places. And this is good because it allows us to see different plot lines happening, and because this way we don't get to be just restricted in Backland again, because we had that in volume 2. And so it would feel very repetitive if the whole volume was just set up again in Backland after we went and explored a much wider area. It's like we were in this big tank and suddenly we were compressed into a small one. Gladly that doesn't happen because Klein, with his newfound powers, is able to travel a lot more. And the thing is, both in Backland and outside of Backland, there are several plot lines, and they're always moving somewhere. There's always something going on, and that allows the reader to always feel like there is something fresh that doesn't stagnate for the same plot line, but also that they're all still very relevant. There's not plot lines that just become very, that's over there, it's not really important, I don't really care. No. All of them end up being quite vital for Klein and for the arc overall. And I think the main arc of this volume and of the volumes that have been going on till now, it was really good. It ended in a good way in the sense that it wasn't completed, but we got kind of a period, and now the next phase is starting. Because of course we couldn't end just here. There's always need to be some more villainous or more evil person behind everything. So yeah, there's that mix of satisfaction, while at the same time we get this newfound excitement because a new part of the arc is starting. Now, one of the things that I wanted to mention regarding plot was the start of this volume, because I felt a bit shaken, not only by the fact that we were returning to Backland, and so I wasn't sure how restricted we were going to be, but the plot itself had promise, but I wasn't sure if it was going to deliver or if it was going to be too slow to deliver that promise. Luckily, everything changed when a certain cathedral scene happened. I'm not going to reveal much because of spoilers. I will have a spoilery chat later on, but just to say that that cathedral scene completely changed the image I have of this volume, my complete mindset, and suddenly I was a lot more excited and the plot became a lot faster, a lot more engaged. So I think for this category, it's going to stay with a 5 out of 5 because I think the plot was very stable. It still was able to deliver some good twists. Okay, let's move on to characters. Okay, so one of the biggest things in the previous volume was that I started seeing finally Qian being fallible, Qian having flaws, and that really excited me because it was one of the biggest criticisms I had in terms of characters, how Qian always seemed perfect, like he wouldn't make a mistake, or if he made mistakes, the mistakes would end up being positive for him. We don't see that anymore, and especially in this volume, I think it's been improved upon even more. I think we're now seeing a lot of cracks in Qian, especially how he cannot advance as fast or he suffers from doing so, and a lot of his plans are failing. They're not just being successful every single time. He actually needs to think about it, and a lot of times there are cracks almost destroying him, and he needs to seek help from other characters so that he can continue pursuing his goals. And I think that's great because it allows the client to be more compatible with the reader, to be more identifiable in the sense, more relatable, that's what I mean, where I as a reader can relate more with Klein because he also fails. He is not this perfect character that does everything right. Now, one of the things I want to mention is that the rest of the characters didn't seem to be that important in this volume. We have a couple of them that are relevant and they show up in a couple of arcs. However, I felt that a lot of the other ones, especially the ones that were in Backland, were very irrelevant. They barely did anything. They would show up from time to time, but those times would be sparse. And I think even the Tarot Club meetings were also very sparse, which is a bit disappointing. I mean, I know they happen every week, but it felt like they weren't very relevant when they happened. And I feel like that is a bit of a criticism, maybe like taking down some points, because it feels, I know that it's central to Klein, but the other characters make the rest of the world feel alive and make sure that the plot is actually big proportions in the sense that it is indeed world endangering plots, which is what we want, because otherwise it feels like they're just going to buy eggs and the eggs have run out from the shopping center, something like that, not that vital for the world. And one other criticism that, I mean, it was coherent with the story, but it felt a bit like Deus Ex Machina, was towards the end with Klein's progression to the next sequence. Felt like, okay, we need to give him a way to support everything, and so we're just going to have this person that has this power and they're going to tell him that he's going to make it, kind of thing. So it was coherent because it makes sense that person having that power, at the same time a bit Deus Ex Machina. So for this category, I'm gonna have to give it a 4 out of 5. Okay, now for world building, like I said before, we go back to Backland, which is a city that we spent a lot of time, including the whole volume 2 in. However, like I said, this doesn't restrict us in terms of world building. One, because we still get to explore a different part of Backland, in this case high society, how it works, but also because Klein is still able to travel to other places, and so we still get that sense of exploration in the outside world. And then of course we have the magic system that keeps being expanded and keeps being deepened, especially regarding artifacts and items. We now have a lot more exposure on how those work. The mythos before of like gods and history, everything keeps getting developed, which is really good because again, that's always that fresh feeling that the world is huge, there's still so much to discover, and that in fact we won't be able to discover everything that exists in this world, but the story will keep us bringing new things. And then of course there's parts that are still super mysterious, like a cathedral, like I keep mentioning, that raises a lot of questions, There aren't many being answered. Some of them are very connected with the plot, which is good because that way you know that eventually you'll get to know more about the world, or the reverse, when you know about the world, you'll know what that plotline will mean. And the best part is, I think so far the magic system and all the items and everything has been very coherent in the world, so there's not a moment where I feel like, this doesn't make much sense because of what you said before. So I think for this category, it's still going to be a 5 out of 5 as well. All right, now for writing style. I think writing style has been improving every volume it improves on certain things and it just keeps getting better. And we have a change of pace throughout the book, which is good because there's some highs, there's some lows. It started off a bit of as a low, but then when I went into that cathedral, it went on a high and it stayed high for quite a while, and there's some lows and then highs again. Anyways, it was good pacing for this volume. There were some times where I was a bit confused, but I think that this was more due to the translation rather than the author, because there would be some descriptions or certain scenes that would have to reread to fully understand it. But once I understood it, I think it was more of a translation issue because the author makes sense what he's trying to achieve with those paragraphs, with those descriptions. And I also think that the author is good at exploring certain themes like poverty, inequality, because we do see him touching some subjects here and there throughout with the characters or settings, and some of the plot lines even reference that quite well. And I think he doesn't do it in your face, it's just the characters realizing the issues around them, trying to fix them. Like Klein is a big advocate of having his morals stay while he does all these things that would be considered quite evil sometimes, but everything is according to his moral compass and still makes a lot of sense, and it's still quite integral to him. And the other thing is, I also think he is writing Klein better, because in the first volume and second, it was borderline annoying. There would be times where I'd be like, oh, just like his attitude is a bit annoying. And I think that has changed quite a bit. I think he's becoming a lot more engaging, a lot more funny, especially when he's lampooning, which, by the way, I don't know if the author actually uses this word, or if it's just a translation that keeps using it, because up until reading this web novel, I did not know about the word lampoon. But now with Klein, he's always lampooning, and that's definitely a word that has stuck with me. And I think that word is funny, and I think it makes a lot of sense for Klein to use it. So that's all I have to say for writing style. Basically, I'm giving this category a 5 out of 5. And finally, enjoyment, which is the most subjective category, and it is the last one. What was my enjoyment in this volume? At the start, again, I was very unsure about how this was going to go because we were returning to a city we had explored. The plot seemed to be too little for the size of the volume, so I was a bit unsure. However, like I keep saying, once a certain cathedral scene happened, my enjoyment spiked right up to the roof, and I just kept reading more and more. In fact, I think this volume was probably the volume I read the fastest. Okay, that it is also smaller than previous volumes, but I read it quite fast. And I also noticed the thing that happens with me, which is when I read something really fast, once I finish it, the next book, I go on to unslab. And that happened exactly. I started volume 5, I'm reading it, I'm close to chapter 1000, but I'm definitely reading it slower than I was when I was going into the last part of the chapter 5, of volume 4, I mean. So if I had to summarize my enjoyment, it started as a 4, but quickly jumped onto a 5, and it stayed at a 5 for the rest of the volume. So for this category, it's going to be a 5 out of 5. And that reaches the end of our review. Just as a refresher, we have 5 for plot, 4 for characters, 5 for world building, 5 for writing style, and 5 for enjoyment. And that gives us a final score of 4.8 out of 5. Okay, it's not a 5 like it was volume 3, however, I still think that this volume was really good, I really enjoyed it, and it was just really the character thing that I wish we had a bit more of those side characters, which I think we're already having in this volume 5 at the point that I'm reading, so I'm really hopeful that the next volume will also be a 5 out of 5. But anyways, I think still a 4.8, amazing score, and considering the whole series in 4 volumes, the average is really high, and on top of that, like, the Goodreads score is 4.72, mine is 4.8, quite similar. I think everyone is thinking similarly in regards to this volume. But I kind of want to know what you think. Do you think this should have been scored higher or lower? Comment down below, and if you're new, don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe, and you shall be seeing videos on Thursdays and Sundays, okay? See you soon.